why would you do it? It's in our blood. You're brought up to it. And I've worked internationally a lot, and I've seen lots of nice places, but nowhere as good as here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we used within the business was in the footsteps of our forefathers, and it was very much the driver for our business was about the people that came before us. And I think we like to think that comes through in what we're doing. It's a passion project. I don't think crofting is easy. It's you put your life and soul every waking hour into looking after the land and the livestock, but it is definitely a way of life, and I would say it's more of a passion for us than anything else.
On the Outer Hebrides, crofting, Gaelic language, music, culture and heritage is at the heart of island life, with traditions spanning many generations being continued and celebrated to this day. On this week's FAS TV, we visit DJ and Lindsay at Long Island Retreats to hear how their croft has changed over the years by recently introducing a croft shop and a range of authentic island experiences for visitors from across the world. And we hear from Padruig Morrison, crofter and professional musician, who shares his love for crofting, island traditions, and his love of music, which now takes him all over Scotland and beyond.
I was brought up in a crofting family in South Uist. Both my parents were from a crofting background, so it was probably not by choice that we had to do crofting chores, but I had an interest in it and still do. So looking back in my childhood, I was quite fortunate to have been brought up with sheep, cattle, ponies, and that interest continues on to this day, and hopefully carried on to the next generations. The history of crofts in the family goes back many generations as well, in both sides of the family.
My background is obviously from the mainland. I was brought up in Speyside, and both sides of my family were from a farming background. My mum's side in Rossshire, and my dad from Perthshire originally, and then moved up to Speyside. So yeah, a farming upbringing, adapting to crofting ways, they're very different, so it's learning that way of life. So I moved across full-time just before lockdown actually in 2020, so we are 5 years in, 2 children on, and a new agri-tourism business as well.
Crofts differ from the west side of the island to the east. So crofts on the east side of the island, because it's poorer ground, are generally bigger crofts with a larger common grazings. And this environment that we are in just now has changed a lot in my lifetime, because there used to be a lot of sheep in the hill, and that maintained the heather and the grass. And with the absence of sheep, the hill is going wild, like rank heather and stuff. That's not good for supporting any kind of animal, because it's too wild. It needs management with livestock of some sort. And that's the long-term goal, is to have cattle back in the hill here and to have sheep. And the crofts on the west side are greener and more fertile, so they support sheep and cattle better, but again they need to be maintained with being grazed as well. And that's important for the animals, it's important for the environment and all the wildlife that lives with us.
When I first moved across to the islands, we always had an ambition in terms of agri-tourism in its rawest sense. We had ruins and old croft houses that we wanted to breathe some life back into. So that was the original concept for us, hence the name Long Island Retreats evolved. And then COVID hit. So we pivoted very quickly. At that point, we started doing our own lamb boxes, and they were snapped up within 2 hours from putting them up for sale on social media. So we knew that there was a demand locally, but we also wanted to work with the visitors coming to the island. So we developed croft tours, macher tours, island tours, and also piggybacked on the popularity of the ponies to do pony experiences as well. And over time, I think, was it year 2 that we kept some of the Aberdeen Angus young stock back. So we then went on to develop our own beef boxes and pork boxes. And the demand was such that we knew we could grow that side of the business, but we also knew that visitors coming on tours were asking about could they buy individual cuts, as were potentially locals that didn't have the space in their freezer for a whole box. So we've grown again, and we've gone down the route of having our own croft shop where people can come in and buy not only our own meats but other local produce from across predominantly the inner and outer Hebrides, and also local crafts and gifts, etc. as well. So the one thing, the original concept for the accommodation is probably the next thing on our list. Again, if the ferry situation stabilises, it gives us just that bit more confidence to do that large capital investment for the accommodation. Our croft tours is an opportunity for people to come onto the croft and get that first-hand experience speaking to a crofter to find out, for most people, what crofting actually means, the way of life, but they also get to get up close with the animals. So whether it's the ponies, pigs, chickens, ducks, out here on the croft, the Highland cattle come out for the summer months. And then we pivot to the Macher tours where they see the Aberdeen Angus herd and how that integrates with the wader birds, the crops and the potatoes that are growing there. The croft shop was a project that we'd had in mind for a while, and then there was the opportunity with BBC Two Designing the Hebrides to put in bids for them to come and make over a space for you. So we thought, well, we've nothing to lose, and Banjo Beale, who's an interior designer based on Mull, came along and transformed the space for us. We were successful in being selected to be one of the makeover projects, and our concept for the shop was very much to take apart the croft outside, inside. We wanted to be a space that reflected what crofting was all about. So you get the corrugated iron, the pieces historically that were part of the croft, like the horse collar and things like that. So yeah, it's a space that we were delighted with the end product of, and it was very much wanting to have something that wasn't stark white walls. It was a talking point once people left, and everybody that's come along from the chicken feeders as the lights, etc., all find something that they engage with and take away as a memory of their visit, I suppose.
Wil sin DJ and Dúil sé hacan seach an sa ruta hacan ha plísal agus anasach gan hélain in níir plis an nárin hacan daló hacan macha de Spain chofasti de chéile agus mar sin na copracha dalana le stoch ginaltra dalana et leide macha de me gemi orsta noch ha monig ha follow and you'll torstoch the one initiative. Main challenges that face crofting at the moment would be rising costs of things just since COVID. So machinery is a challenge because it has really got expensive. Machinery has got a lot more advanced and efficient as well, so we're having to pay more for that. So crofting, as it was, supported that side of it, but now we're in a very tight corner, whereas to invest in machinery, it looks to me that possibly we'll have to form groups of people to purchase that. Where an example would be 20 years ago you could have sold 10 calves and bought a significant piece of machinery. To buy the equivalent to that now, you're selling 20 calves and probably having to put the value of another 20 towards that. And that, so economies of scale will come into play on that. The way forward, people will have to work together and, like I said, just share machinery. And it's also how crofters are going to be supported financially for the future as well is going to be critically important, because I understand that cattle numbers in the islands are steady, but it's less people keeping more cattle. And people that take over crofts with cattle on them generally keep the herds going. But for new people coming into crofting, if you have a handful of cows, half a dozen, there's a huge outlay for you to invest in machinery and feed for these animals. So that's a question for someone higher up the ladder than me to answer. What support is out there for these people? As an island, we are community owned, so there's funding opportunities out there for the landlords to access funds to develop facilities for crofting, and possibly even to form groups for supporting crofters in the purchase of machinery. if they had a bank of machinery that they could access and hire out. And again, that's something that needs a little bit of thinking from various bodies to pull together. It's a fantastic environment to come to and to work in. You couldn't ask for better. Yes, we have our challenges, but you have that everywhere. So we have some of the best quality livestock in the country, raised to some of the highest standards. So yeah, it is promising. I find it very heartening to see when we go to the marts that there's a lot of youngsters there, and that's our future. Youngsters being teenagers and even younger, because there was a period about 15 to 20 years ago where that gap was missing. So that's very positive to see that.
Scottish Agritourism is the national body for agritourism in Scotland. It's a growing group of businesses from the length and breadth of the country, from the Western Isles like ourselves, up to Shetland and Orkney and down to the border. So there really is representation across the board. And they work on a number of levels, from lobbying to marketing. And there's such a strong community and network there. I think that's probably the key selling point for anybody that's a part of that. And it's very much taking people from grassroots, from concept, right through to thriving established business. So for us, we joined at a stage where we just had ideas. And I would say that by being a member of the group, we very much dreamt a little bit bigger in terms of what we would do and where we could take our product. And the other members were quite instrumental to that in terms of being able to pick up the phone and just say to them, how would we do this? So when we started out our meat box scheme, it was very much another member picking up the phone, and they talked us through the whole process, which is really invaluable to anybody that's just starting out. So I became a destination leader 3 years ago now, and I became a board member a year and a half ago. So the organisation is really going from strength to strength. Next year we have secured the inaugural World Agri-Tourism Conference. So that comes to Aberdeen and is a great opportunity for anybody to actually engage and learn about agri-tourism on a worldwide basis. So they are hoping to have people from over 100 countries represented. So again, a great opportunity to just network and find out ideas from elsewhere across the globe. I suppose the stage that we're at just now, we probably had envisaged we would be further forwards, but when you throw two little people into that, it slows things down ever so slightly. I think we've got a core established business in terms of the tours that we run, and the market that we have for our meat, and year on year we're keeping back more livestock. So at the moment we probably finish about half of our young stock from the Aberdeen Angus herd, and there's the potential that we want to do that with the Highlanders as well. So yeah, it's definitely growing, the meat production. I think there is a market for us. I think not just on island, but elsewhere people are very much interested in the provenance of our produce. And yeah, accommodation is the one thing that we would like to really tick off, because that gives people an all-encompassing experience. They can come and stay on the croft, they can taste the produce, and they can learn all about crofting. We're also working with a number of different travel trade buyers for international visitors coming to the island, and that links in with other accommodation providers and activity providers to kind of showcase everything that is great about our destination here in the Outer Hebrides. Our advice probably to other people starting out is don't be afraid to reach out to others and ask questions. I would say the Agritourism Network is probably one of the most supportive networks that I have ever come across, and no one is, I wouldn't say they're in competition with each other. They're very willing to help and share information wherever possible. I think testing the market is probably a really important thing. We did that with our lamb boxes to see sort of the appetite and the volume in which we could grow that. And again, with the beef, we retained 5 beasts the first year. Again, it's 2 years before we're finishing those animals. So it's about testing it, and if you start out small, then you've room to grow. But yeah, don't be afraid to take those first steps. Reach out, get support. The network is there to help you all the way.
For the future of crofting, I think for youngsters to be out there and just groom as much information as possible out of people, because when I was a youngster, there was a lot of people actively crofting, so there was a lot of information out there that unfortunately, I didn't take all of it on board. But the knowledge is there. People are there to help each other. We have a good network of people, and you can reach out to people and ask their opinions. They will give you the opinions and guidance, and from that you can make your own mind up. There's a lot of changes in crofting year to year because of the weather. Weather is what dictates how things go. So you can't say that you're going to do a certain chore on a certain week in every month, every year. You've just got to play it by ear and be prepared to adapt. But yeah, there's lots of help out there, whether it be from Farm Advisory Body or through other crofters.
So the design of the shop was, I'm not going to say necessarily our choice. We gave concepts that we liked, and then the most difficult bit for us with working on the makeover series was that we had to give free rein to Banjo to come in and literally walk away for 4 days. So we had said we wanted the outside brought inside. We had given him ideas like corrugated iron was something that was a part of crofting life, and we then took him to a couple of different places. A shed at the back of DJ's mum's house where they dug out lots of different things, horse bits, collars, the milk urns, etc. And then we took him to DJ's dad's shed on his croft, which was still full of all the different pieces he had before he passed away. So it was very much a rummaging through lovely old things, and the great thing about Banjo was that he sees the beauty in older pieces, which was very much about what we wanted to do. And it was very much taking those older pieces and telling the story of DJ's family and the croft life. We wanted people that were out on a tour to come back in and really connect with the shop space. In terms of what we chose to stock, it was very much about supporting local businesses across the island. So we work both inner and outer Hebrides and sort of down the west coast of Scotland, showcasing other people's food and drink products, as well as crafts and homeware gifts, etc. So we work with some people on island. We've got a lovely lady just a few miles down the road, takes local wool, spins it and produces lovely thatched houses that are sold and are great for the Americans. They love it as a piece of the Hebrides to take home. So yeah, it's about showcasing what the islands are all about.
What is key to success? Seeing your business grow and seeing new people coming in through the door daily. It's very interesting to meet people that come on tours from all over the world and why they've come here as well. Some of them are through historic connections to the island, but maybe third, fourth generation left here. It's also interesting to hear how different farming practices across the world are. Some of them are similar to here, some of them have a very similar history to here as well. So you measure your success if you're getting more people coming in through the door and from further afield. That to me is you're doing something right.
I think success, if you have a business that's driven by passion, it's about being able to probably live the life that we want to live. So myself and DJ both worked on the mainland when we first moved across and we were travelling back and forth. We knew with a young family that success for us was about actually being able to be here, bring them up in the way of life that we wanted. But yeah, with the business, it's about the reviews that people leave us saying, do you know, it's the best thing that they did on the islands. It was fascinating. Yeah, I think the connection with the people that come to visit us and the feedback that they give us is probably a true testament to success. The numbers at the end of the day, yes, they're lovely to have, but is that really the heart of your business? For us, it's more about the lifestyle and actually being able to showcase what crofting and the heritage and the culture was all about.
I'm working today the croft that I grew up on, and I was very lucky to grow up here. And my father, who was much older, had kind of wound down the croft a bit when I was growing up. He used to have cattle here long ago, but got rid of them long before I came along. So it was just a bit of the sheep that I grew up used to. And then when I was in my early 20s, I took on the croft. I'd been away on the mainland and studying, and then I was coming back. And so took on the croft, and then just 3 years ago, I reintroduced cattle back onto the croft, as well as kind of expanding a few of the things that we do here. When I took on the croft, it was blackface sheep and Hebridean sheep that were here. Blackface, of course, being common and hardy around these parts. The Hebridean, a bit more unusual. But my father, like some others, well, both my parents, as well as some others in the 90s, had been part of reintroducing Hebrideans to the Hebrides, with the idea that they'd be a bit more light on the ground. You could maybe have a few more of them per area, and they're nice because they're the native breed that's from here. Since what they were doing, I've then taken it and I've expanded some of the numbers on blackface and Hebridean, maintaining the pedigree Hebridean flock that they had started. I've then been crossing the Hebrideans to now have some more commercial Heb mules, and some of those I put to the Suffolk ram then. And then I've reintroduced cattle. I've got some Shorthorn Cross Highland, and more recently I've been working with some Cross Dexters. A lot of the ground that I've got here is black soil, kind of peaty, but also very soft. And so while in Uist, because of scaling up large machinery and larger animals, larger cattle in particular, a lot of that went to the west coast, to the Macher, where they can handle the weight of both machinery and large animals. And the east side of Uist, with this harder ground, never kept up with the larger machines and the larger cows. So it is a concern for me to kind of figure out what the right size of cattle is. Cattle have obviously become much bigger, so I'm thinking much more about the animals that were here a few generations ago, and thinking what's very well suited to what the land can carry. When I'm not on the croft or doing my croft work, I'm busy involved with music. I'm full-time as a musician and as a composer, which takes me often away to the mainland, and also teaching and playing locally as well. For me, the two things go very well together, because it's kind of part of the one cultural identity for me. I think here in Uist, the crofting way of life, as well as the language, which is still so strong in the crofting sector, Gaelic. That's my first language, and many crofters, it's the language that you hear at the fanks, you hear at the sales, and the music that goes along with that. Those things all go together and are all so important to me. So, you know, I enjoy teaching a lot of the young folk locally that are so interested in the language, the music, and just the kind of way of life here, which also includes the crofting. So I see all of those things as being very closely related. Nu, dat was me zo is, dat kruintje in de gericht, maar vast de gooi pehe elenich aan de hel, agus. We kunnen later maar vast geen werk in gebruik zijn. Ieder gerucht is een leuk kruintje aan de Gaelic. Ik zei je nou, ik lang toen je haast, maar we mijn zaakje trang geprien aan de Gaelic. Ha geen kutjach, maar vast die geen weg als een laatje zag. Ha Kalian se geul, Ghana, maar vast geen zenach. Zo gaan ze aan mij vandaag Gyle dau weten yn rwt o sien, gymal laat het haast. Agus hiw sien an y fiwnioca diw. Fiwnioca hat yn sŵs, agus wy fawrach an y krychtidach. Trich gyda'r hat cwtiach gacwmse an y glasich yn ciwl, agus wyach as y cheld, agus nŵrwyd diach daut behe as yn laat y sioch. Agus hema fi fenchyn cael sien, ich eich cholaat i diw, se fe ddiwf. One of the things that I think about quite a bit with what I'm doing on the croft is, you know, as a younger crofter, how do we croft now and going into the future? And you know, and I'm kind of still building up the croft. I'm still at the start of it, and so I'm mindful of the fact that I've got years to kind of build something, and you want to build something that is heading in the right way for the way that we're going to be crofting in 20 years. And I think there's been a whole trend to try and compete much more with farming kind of on the scale that's in the mainland and in bigger systems and on much, much better land than certainly I have here. And so something that, that causes me to then think a lot more about the cost of trying to keep up with that, the added cost of being on the island here. And in a way, I've come to realise that, we shouldn't necessarily be trying to compete with places with better ground or with bigger systems. The most sensible way to be doing it is to be thinking about what is suitable for where we are. And, I think a good way of finding the answers for that is to think about what was here for many years and the way in which people did it. And, that's why a big part of my system is to include some of the hardy genetics of traditional breeds, and also to utilise the common grazings, because that's what people were using for crofting here, and pre-crofting people were having animals that were roaming over common land and working collaboratively. And I think that is beneficial to the kind of nature and the environment of this place as well, that it's a low density, these animals are then roaming over a large area, and that benefits that environment then. One of the things that I've tried out is crossing the Hebrideans with a Blueface Leicester to get a Hebridean mule, with the idea that that's a hardier and slightly lighter on feed mule than the Scotch mule, and it has that connection to the native breed here in the Hebrides, but that will also give me a commercial lamb off them, a Suffolk cross lamb off that mule that I can then send to the commercial sale. And it's early days for me trying that at the moment, but at the moment that's working very well, and that's me kind of responding to the environment and also responding to the system that we have with the sales. It's a system I might have to adapt in future, and I'm willing to adapt in future to what changes may come, but that seems to be working quite well at the moment. The other thing that I've done more of in the last few years is to try and supply meat and meat boxes locally, especially having the Hebridean sheep, which are easier than some of the other breeds to bring through the winter here and finish, that then get no money at a commercial sale here. It makes far more sense to then finish them and sell them in meat boxes. And there's a huge demand for meat here locally, and I think crofting has a huge role to play in feeding the local community. If there are 5,000 or so folk in Uist, and there's not far off the same number of cattle, and there's maybe 3 or more than 3 times as many sheep per person here as well. There's no question we should be able to feed ourselves here, but sometimes that involves kind of innovating in the system and maybe not sending them all to a sale, but putting in a wee bit of that extra effort to sell them as meat boxes. And that's something that's worked really well for me here, and I think there's a lot of appetite for that. Over the last few years locally here, I think it's been very apparent that a lot of young folk want to stay here. Young folk are returning to the island younger, and many are staying and very interested in crofting alongside other jobs, and keen to continue their crofts and be active in crofting and enjoy that part of their life. But for some it can be harder to get in because crofts coming on the market can be either few and far between or far too expensive. So I think it's really important that young people are given the opportunities to either help out on land, to have land that they can use informally that might then go towards then a more formal sublet arrangement, and then might get preference of purchase then. I think it's been really clear in certain areas such as our local agricultural committee for the show. There's lots of younger folk involved with that here now, and so you can see that lots of folk want to be crofting. So we've got to make sure that all these unused and neglected crofts are brought back into use, and they're connected with the young folk that are here wanting and desperate to get their hands on some land to use. There's the appetite for it there, so we just need to connect these people, and I think encourage maybe some of the ones that are either not using the land or nearing retirement, that we need to look to the next generation. We need to pass on that knowledge, and we importantly need to pass on that land so that folk can look after and work that land for years to come. So it's really kind of 5 years I've been properly working on this croft in a kind of more fully resident capacity and building it substantially over that time. And my focus has in that time really been on the sheep and building on what was here already, and then reintroducing cattle. What I'd like to do over the next 5 years, I think, is sort out the right balance between cattle and sheep on the land that's here. Have the right kind and size of cattle for keeping and breeding from, potentially, well, most likely crossbreeding from, so having larger calves of them for selling, the right size and the right ratio. I think cattle, increasingly we know more about cattle being the right kind of answer for farming sustainably and crofting sustainably with the environment, and we know that there were many more cattle here in the past. So I think I need to reduce the sheep numbers a bit and increase the cattle numbers a bit more. And of course, part of doing that for my kind of land here, one of the biggest challenges will be to increase the amount of winter feed that I can produce for the cattle. So that's something I think any croft that has evidence of historically being able to grow corn and make hay and make bales today, I think people should be trying to do that again. Again, in the past, we find an answer for how crofts were able to produce more feed, and that's that animals were on the common, on the hill in the summer, while parks were saved for making hay, or today it could be making haylage or silage. So I'm increasingly trying to do that, have the animals on the common, and then I'm able to try and make as many bales as possible. It's not easy on some of the ground that I've got, but I've got photos of great big haystacks that my grandfather made on this croft. So I know it can be done, and I feel that's important to try and achieve that again. I do think cattle are an important asset for your system, and grazing them rotationally with the sheep. So having brought cattle back onto the croft, I've been able to do that. I've also been able to put cattle out onto the common and use other fields, even with dilapidated fences, by having the no fence collars on them. That's allowed me to use fields without good fences, also allowed me to kind of not have them grazing the whole thing all the time, but to kind of almost strip graze it in ways, and just have a better control of where the cattle are at all times. The other really important part of being able to croft, for me, having the collars on the cattle means I know where they are at all times, be it in a croft a couple of miles up the road, or be it on the common. And even if I'm at home or I'm away gigging or in different countries, I'm able to see at any second where the cattle are, and so I can be keeping an eye on them, and that's been really important for me as well. A couple of things that I feel that are useful for young crofters today are to be asking to help others and try and pick up stuff when you're helping older crofters. You know, the older crofters might not be maybe so quick in coming forward with information and tips for you, but if you kind of gain a bit of trust by working with them and spending time with them, there's incredible knowledge in there. And I think more and more as conversations move towards sustainability and crofting with the environment, the understanding of what worked for centuries, and had to work by being in tune with the environment. That kind of knowledge is so important, and that knowledge is in the oldest generation still around today. So spend time with those folk, learn the stuff that was done here in the past, and understand that things have changed, but to know how things have changed allows us to understand a bit of how things can adapt again in future, and I'm sure that will happen, so make the most of that kind of knowledge. I've often wondered when I could be doing much more in the way of music or being away playing, but at times in the winter when the weather is awful and the day is so short, and if there's stuff that you need to go out and do with the stock, and it could be 5 in the morning or 1 in the morning the other side, and it's raining and cold, and I don't question it. I just know I need to do it and go and do it and enjoy it. And I think I've realised that if I'm happy enough to go and do that in those conditions, I must enjoy it for sure. And I think I realise now, definitely, I do enjoy, it doesn't matter the awful weather, you kind of forget it when there's good days and when you see crops growing or you see stock coming on. And so I wouldn't be without the croft now, and I think it makes total sense that when we've got some land to be able to produce something from it that you can feed your own table or feed some others from, that's really important, and I think we should all be doing a bit more of that.